so bad that it wasn't pretty.
The morning sun crept over quiet Flagstaff, its golden rays slicing through the heavy haze that hung over the Brown family's world. It should have been just another Tuesday, but this day was different because today, Kody Brown wasn't walking into a family meeting. He was walking into a courtroom. Christine stood outside the courthouse, coat pulled tight against the early chill. Janelle was silent beside her, her expression unreadable. The two women didn't need to speak. They'd already said everything that mattered. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Inside, cameras from the local press lined the hallways. The whispers echoed off the marble floors. Kody Brown, the man with 4 wives, the one who said love could be divided and still thrive. That man was now about to stand before a judge, but as a defendant, not a patriarch. Christine drew in a slow breath as they entered. "You ready?" Janelle asked low. Christine nodded, eyes forward. "I've been ready for years." Kody arrived minutes later, his usual confidence dimmed but not gone. His posture was stiff, defensive, his jaw tight as he avoided their eyes. Robyn trailed behind him, eyes red, clutching a folder close to her chest. She looked less like a wife now, and more like someone clinging on to a life slipping through her fingers. When Kody's eyes met Christine's across the courtroom, the tension was instant, electric, suffocating. She didn't flinch. He did. The bailiff called the room to order. "All rise for Judge Harper." The judge was a woman in her 60s with keen eyes that didn't let one thing slip by. She had seen families like this before, those who smiled for the cameras and fractured behind closed doors. She adjusted her glasses and spoke evenly. "Let's begin." As the case unfolded, the room felt smaller, tighter. The air seemed to vibrate with everything left unsaid. Christine sat upright at the witness table, her lawyer next to her. Kody leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, as if the posture itself could make him untouchable. "Mr. Brown," the judge began, "you're here today regarding allegations of financial mismanagement and withheld funds pertaining to shared family assets. We are also here today to discuss unresolved matters from the Coyote Pass Property Division." Kody's lips pressed into a thin line. "Yes, Your Honor, but I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Christine's attorney stood. "A misunderstanding, Your Honor, that just happens to involve 6 figures and forged signatures?" A ripple moved through the courtroom. Even Robyn's head dropped. Kody's face flushed bright red. "That's not true. Everything I did was in the interest of protecting the family." Christine spoke for the first time. "No, Kody, you were protecting yourself." Her tone was calm, controlled. Years of silence had taught her that words were like weapons, sharp, precise, and final. The judge turned to her. "Mrs. Brown, please explain." Christine stood up, her hands clasped in front of her. "For years we placed our money, our homes, our futures into Kody's hands. He said he had it handled. But when Janelle and I asked to see the accounts, he refused. When we asked about the property, he told us we were imagining things." Kody snorted. "I never said that," Christine cut him off. "You did. More than once. You said, 'You don't understand how this works.' But the truth is, we do now." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you have proof, Mrs. Brown?" Christine nodded towards Janelle. "We both do." Janelle pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were months of emails, transaction logs, and copies of legal documents. Each one told a story, not of misunderstanding, but of manipulation. The judge flipped through the papers slowly, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Brown," she said finally, "can you explain why funds from shared accounts were transferred into a private business registered under your name and Mrs. Robyn Brown's?" Kody hesitated, looking for words that didn't exist. It was temporary. We were moving money for tax purposes." Christine shook her head. "You moved money to keep control. That's what this was always about." Kody slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough." The bailiff stepped forward. The judge's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Mr. Brown, you will control yourself in my courtroom." For the first time in his life, Kody looked small. Not because of the cameras or whispers or papers stacked against him, but because the illusion of power was cracking right there in front of everyone. The press waited like vultures outside the courthouse. Headlines had already begun to spread. Kody Brown accused of mismanaging family funds. Christine Brown returns to court. The truth about Coyote Pass. Inside, Kody leaned back in his chair, breathing hard. He shot a glare toward Christine. "You wanted this, didn't you? To humiliate me?" Christine's voice was quiet but cutting. "No, Kody. I wanted you to tell the truth." Robyn reached for his hand, but he pulled away, his eyes darting between the judge and the pile of evidence. For the first time, he looked uncertain, cornered. Judge Harper leaned forward. "Mr. Brown, from where I am sitting, this does not look like leadership. It looks like manipulation." Her voice was even icy. "And if what's in this evidence holds up, I'd say you went too far." The courtroom fell dead silent. Christine exhaled, shutting her eyes for only a moment. Words hung in the air, "You went too far." It was more than just a judgment. It was the truth she had waited years to hear someone else say out loud. Outside, as the session recessed, Janelle leaned in close. "You okay?" Christine nodded, her voice steady. "Better than I've been in a long time." Kody lingered behind, staring down at the table as his world shifted under him. The control that he had built was gone. The family that once followed him had found their own strength. And for the first time in his life, Kody Brown was standing alone. Christine turned toward the door as the voice of the judge echoed for one final time through the chamber. A beam of light fell across her face through the window, soft gold, the light of someone finally free. The courthouse was quieter now, but the tension hung like fog. The first recess had given everyone a moment to breathe, or pretend to. Reporters milled around outside, waiting for another headline. Inside, Kody paced the hall, jaw tight, voice low and sharp as a knife. Robyn tried to calm him, whispering, "Kody, please, you're making it worse." He turned on her, eyes wild. "Making it worse? Do you even realize what's happening in there? They're painting me like some kind of criminal, Robyn. Like I stole from them." Robyn blinked rapidly, her eyes glassy. "Maybe if you just explained—" "Explained what?" Kody barked, too loud. Heads turned. "That I tried to keep the family afloat? That every single thing I did was for them?" His voice cracked under the weight of frustration. "They don't want truth. They want revenge." Robyn's hand hovered, unsure whether to touch him. "Maybe this isn't about them wanting revenge," she said softly. "Maybe this is just the consequences you never thought would come." He said nothing for a second. Then he broke the silence with a short, bitter laugh and muttered, "You sound just like her." Christine sat next to Janelle in the courtroom, wordless, as their lawyer organized the next wave of evidence. Christine's hands were steady, but her heart was pounding. She had waited years for accountability, but it still felt surreal to watch it unfold. "Are you sure you're okay?" Janelle whispered. Christine nodded. I didn't think he'd actually show his temper like that." Janelle smirked. "He can't help himself." Kody always thought control was leadership. Their lawyer leaned in. "Next, we'll be introducing records from Family Traditions LLC, the transfers and the notes attached." Christine took a deep breath. "Then let's finish this." When court reconvened, the mood had shifted. The judge sat a little straighter, her expression firm. She could feel the storm brewing before a word was said. Christine's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, as discussed, we are entering Exhibits 32 through 47. Financial statements obtained through subpoena from Family Traditions LLC and KN&R Holdings." Kody stiffened. "Here we go," he muttered under his breath. The attorney continued. "As we can see, over a period of 3 years, significant amounts, over $400,000, were transferred from the central family account into KN&R Holdings, a business only in the name of Mr. Kody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown." The judge peered over her glasses at him. "Is this correct, Mr. Brown?" Kody leaned forward. "Your Honor, that money was for taxes and property investments. It wasn't stolen. It was—" Christine's voice cut in, calm but clear. "Then why didn't you tell us?" He turned sharply, his glare cutting across the room. "Because you wouldn't understand." The gavel hit the desk. "Mr. Brown!" Control yourself. The sound rumbled out like thunder. Janelle stood, papers in hand. Your Honor, may I speak? The judge nodded. You may. Janelle walked to the center of the room, her voice steady. For years we asked to see the financials. We asked for transparency. We were told that the money was gone, that there was nothing left for our homes at Coyote Pass. Christine had to move out. I lived in an RV. We thought we were broke. But he wasn't broke. She spun, facing Kody. You told me there wasn't enough for a foundation. Meanwhile, you were moving money into an account that we didn't even know existed. Kody slammed his hands down. I was trying to protect what was left. Protect it from who? She shot back. From your family? The judge's voice cut through again. That's enough. The courtroom was silent, except for the faint clicking of cameras in the back. Christine leaned forward. Your Honor, this isn't about money anymore. It's about manipulation. For years, Kody made decisions for all of us. Where we lived, what we bought, how we spent. He called it leadership. But it was control. When we disagreed, he punished us emotionally. He'd stop visiting. He'd say we were being disloyal. Kody's jaw flexed, his face red. You're twisting everything. I loved this family. The judge studied him closely. And yet, Mr. Brown, every piece of evidence points to one person benefiting. You. Kody's eyes darted around, searching for someone to defend him. But even Robyn stayed quiet. Her hands were trembling in her lap, eyes down. Next, Christine's lawyer called a soft-spoken accountant named Marianne. She adjusted her glasses and began. I was hired to review the records from both Family Traditions LLC and KNR Holdings. Clearly, the transactions show repeated transfers between the two entities, many times within hours of Christine or Janelle's withdrawals or requests being denied. The judge raised an eyebrow. And who authorized these transfers? Mr. Kody Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown, Marianne replied. No one else had access. Robyn's face went pale. That's not fair, she whispered. I just signed what Kody gave me. The accountant continued. Your Honor, there's also evidence of purchases tied directly to KNR Holdings, including jewelry, designer clothing, and multiple online orders under Mrs. Robyn Brown's name. A quiet gasp ran through the courtroom. Kody shot up from his chair. Objection. That's private. That's... The gavel came down again, harder this time. Mr. Brown! One more outburst and I'll have you removed. Christine didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Every lie, every manipulation, it was all unraveling before him, years of emotional warfare collapsing under the weight of truth. The judge sighed. Let's take a short recess. Mr. Brown, I suggest you use this time to calm yourself. People stood, and murmurs filled the courtroom. Cameras clicked. Christine turned to Janelle. You okay? Janelle nodded, looking at Kody. He's falling apart. Outside the courtroom, Kody leaned against the wall, hands shaking. Nearby, Robyn stood, crying silently. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering, They're destroying everything. My family, my reputation, all of it. Robyn's voice cracked. Kody, maybe this is what happens when you try to control everyone. He stared at her, shocked. You think this is my fault? Tears streamed down her face. I think you forgot what a family is. He scoffed and turned away. You sound just like them. For the first time, Robyn didn't run after him. Inside, Christine sat quietly and stared out the window. Beyond the glass, the world went on. Cars passing, people walking, oblivious to the unraveling of one man's kingdom. Janelle broke the silence. Do you think he'll ever admit it? Christine slowly shook her head. Kody doesn't see truth as truth. He sees it as betrayal. Then what happens next? Janelle asked. Christine looked back toward the door. Next? He's going to explode. And deep down, they both knew it was true. Because if Kody Brown couldn't control the narrative, he'd try to destroy it. And when court resumed, the meltdown that followed would become the moment everyone remembered. The day the judge finally said the words that shattered his illusion of power. When court reconvened after the recess, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Reporters whispered to one another as Kody marched back into the courtroom, his jaw set, his eyes burning with anger. Christine and Janelle sat together at the witness table, their faces calm but their hearts steady with resolve. The air was thick, like those final seconds before a storm. The judge entered and all rose. A single gavel strike sounded around the room. "Let's continue," Judge Harper said firmly. "Mr. Brown, please remember this is a court of law. Maintain your composure." Kody's lips twitched, but he nodded stiffly. Robyn sat a few seats behind him, her hands clasped, silently praying that he would keep his temper. But even she could see it, the cracks forming in his mask. Christine's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to submit additional audio evidence, a recorded conversation between Mr. Brown and Mrs. Christine Brown from late 2021. This was provided voluntarily by the plaintiff." Kody's head snapped up. "What?" His voice was sharp, almost panicked. Christine didn't look at him. She only stared forward, her face unreadable. The judge gestured. "Proceed." The lawyer pressed play. From the speakers came Kody's voice, loud, defensive, familiar. "You don't get to question me, Christine. You think you've sacrificed? I built this family. You just want pity." A beat of silence followed. Then Christine's voice, soft but steady. "I wanted love, Kody, not control." The playback stopped in the courtroom. The sound of that one sentence seemed to hang there in the air. Kody's face went red. "You're taking that out of context," he barked. "You're twisting everything." The judge's gavel struck again. "Mr. Brown?" He ignored her. He turned toward Christine. "You want to make me look like a monster? You're lying to everyone, and you know it." Christine didn't move. "I don't have to make you look like anything, Kody. You're doing that yourself." The entire courtroom froze. For years, people had seen him as the patriarch, the confident head of a family who spoke about unity and faith. But now, the cameras captured a different Kody, the man behind the anger, the control, the chaos. Robyn whispered from behind, "Kody, stop. Please stop." But he didn't. He slammed his hand on the table. "You think this family survived because of you? I kept it together. You all turned your backs on me." The judge's voice rose sharply. "Mr. Brown, enough. Sit down or I will hold you in contempt." He stood there for a long moment, his chest heaving, his eyes full of rage. And then, slowly, he sat down. But his silence wasn't peace. It was boiling restraint. Christine's attorney took a deep breath. "Your Honor, this behavior, an inability to take responsibility, is exactly what has caused years of emotional harm to the women sitting across from him. The evidence shows financial deceit, but it also shows manipulation, control, and gaslighting. Would you like to respond, Mr. Brown?" The judge said, turning to Kody. He clenched his fists. "Yeah, I'll respond. I was trying to be a leader, a husband, a father. You think this family fell apart because of me? They stopped listening. They stopped respecting me. They stopped being wives." Christine closed her eyes. Janelle's face hardened. The judge frowned. "Mr. Brown, you're not on trial for losing your family. You're here for how you handled it, financially, emotionally, and ethically." Kody leaned forward, his voice rising again. "You think you understand what it's like to lead a family that big? To have everyone turn against you?" Judge Harper didn't flinch. "No, Mr. Brown, but I do understand what it looks like when someone refuses to take responsibility for their own choices." That landed like a hammer. Kody sank back, eyes darting to Robyn, the only person still sitting on his side of the room. But even she couldn't meet his eyes. The next witness to testify was a property manager. "Your Honor, I was responsible for overseeing development plans for Coyote Pass. Mr. Brown told me the land was being divided evenly, but when I checked the documents, the parcels weren't split at all. Everything was under his and Robyn's names." "Of course it was," Janelle muttered under her breath. The judge looked at Kody again. "Mr. Brown, did you ever intend to divide the land equally among your wives?" Kody shifted. "I planned to, but things changed." Christine spoke up, her voice cutting through the silence. Things change because you wanted them to. You wanted control. He glared at her. I wanted loyalty. Christine held his gaze. Loyalty isn't obedience, Kody. The words hit him like a punch. His face twisted, part rage, part guilt, part pain. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't just a courtroom anymore. This was the collapse of a life he'd built on fear disguised as faith. The judge sighed, tired but focused. Mr. Brown, I need you to understand something. Leadership doesn't give you the right to silence others. Love doesn't mean ownership. And from where I'm sitting, you blurred that line for far too long. Her words were firm, but not cruel. They carried the weight of truth, not anger. For a moment, Kody said nothing. His shoulders dropped. He looked smaller, worn down, like a man who for the first time realized his reflection was no longer the one he thought he saw. But then his voice broke through again, quieter this time. You don't understand. I gave everything. Everything I had, Christine said in a whisper. You gave it to control us, not to love us. That was it. His composure shattered. He stood again, voice raw, almost pleading. You don't get it, Christine. You don't get to stand there and act like you were the victim. I tried. The gavel came down hard. Mr. Brown, sit down now. But the damage was done. Every word had been recorded. Every expression captured. The man who built his image around control was unraveling in front of the world. Christine spoke finally, her tone soft but cutting through the noise. This isn't about winning anymore. It's about ending this. The judge nodded slowly. And I think we're getting there. The courtroom fell silent once more. Robyn's quiet sobs could be heard in the background. Janelle rubbed Christine's arm, whispering, You did the right thing. Christine nodded but found her eyes distant, her expression a reflection of sorrow, not victory. Because even now, after everything, part of her still mourned what could have been. Kody sat back, staring at the floor, his face pale. The anger had drained away, leaving only defeat. His empire, his family, was collapsing one truth at a time. The judge closed her notes. We'll reconvene tomorrow to finalize testimony. Court is adjourned. With every person standing, camera lights flashed, voices rose, and Christine walked past Kody without a word. For the first time, he didn't call out after her, didn't demand to be heard. He just watched, his lips quivering, his eyes lost. Outside, Christine stepped out into the golden light of the sun that was dipping behind the courthouse, Janelle at her side. It's almost over, she whispered. Janelle nodded. Yeah, but something tells me tomorrow. Won't end quietly. Christine glanced over at the courtroom doors a last time, the ones Kody had strode through with pride, and now would be walking out in ruin. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. And what came next? Would change everything. The next morning, the courthouse was more subdued, heavier. Even the walls, it seemed, were waiting for something irreversible to happen. Clouds rolled in over the Arizona sky, gray and restless. Inside, Christine sat silent, her hands folded in her lap. Janelle sat next to her, steady but tense. Today wasn't about argument. Today was about consequence. Kody entered, his face unreadable across the room. His suit was pressed, but his eyes looked sunken, tired. He was followed by Robyn, tear-streaked, clutching tissues like lifelines. There was no conversation between them, just silence. A silence that said everything. When the judge entered, everybody rose. The sound of her gavel echoed one sharp time. This court is now in session for the final statements in Brown versus Brown. Christine's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this case has never been about vengeance. It's about truth. For years, the Brown family presented themselves to the world as some sort of symbol of unity. Behind closed doors, there was deception, control, and emotional damage. Evidence is clear. Financial records of hidden transfers, manipulation of property titles, and a premeditated attempt at isolation with the purpose of domination. He turned toward Kody, his voice calm but cutting. What was once a family has become a power structure, built on control. Christine and Janelle are not here to destroy Kody Brown. They're here to reclaim their lives. Christine looked down at her hands, eyes wet but steady. She had waited years to hear someone speak that truth aloud, without fear, without being talked over, without being gaslit into silence. The lawyer said, We ask that this court recognize not just the legal wrongdoing, but the pattern of behavior that allowed it, and to give these women what they were long denied: closure. When it came to Kody, he stood up slowly. The room fell silent. He didn't look at Christine or Janelle or even Robyn. He stared at the floor for a long moment before finally speaking. "I know I made mistakes," he started. His voice was low, almost fragile. "I tried to build something that mattered. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I kept everyone together, it would make sense. But I guess I went too far trying to hold on." Christine's eyes flickered toward him. For a brief second, she saw the man she once believed in, the one who said love could hold anything together. Kody exhaled shakily. "I didn't steal money. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. His voice cracked. "I just didn't want to lose my family." A moment of dead silence filled the courtroom. The judge even looked at him with a flicker of pity. But then he straightened, the fire returning to his eyes. "But don't act like I'm the only one who made mistakes. Christine, you left. You destroyed what we built. You didn't care about what I carried." Christine's voice was soft, but it was steady. "You never carried us, Kody. You carried control." The words fell like a sentence before the sentence. Judge Harper leaned forward, eyes moving between them. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, what I've witnessed here is not just a financial dispute. It's the unraveling of something that was broken long before it reached my courtroom." She shuffled through her notes, then looked up. "The evidence presented shows consistent financial concealment and emotional manipulation. Mr. Brown, you may not have set out to cause harm, but your choices did. Your actions show a clear pattern of control under the guise of leadership." Kody's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Robyn sniffled quietly behind him. The judge continued, her voice strong. "The court finds for the plaintiffs, Christine and Janelle Brown. The assets of Coyote Pass will be divided equally. All accounts associated with KN&R Holdings will be audited and then redistributed in equal ownership." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Kody's hands had clenched into fists. "You can't do that." "I can," the judge interrupted. "And I just did." She leaned forward slightly. "And Mr. Brown, as for your conduct, I advise you to take this outcome not as punishment but as reflection. You built a house of faith and family, but you forgot the foundation: respect." Christine didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She just exhaled, a long, trembling breath that seemed to lift a decade of weight off her shoulders. Janelle squeezed her hand. "It's over," she whispered. But Christine shook her head slowly. "No, it's finished. There's a difference." Kody sat, still and pale, while camera flashes lit up around him, reporters whispering, pens scratching. "Kody Brown loses Coyote Pass battle. Christine Brown wins court victory." Every headline carved another fracture into the image he had fought so desperately to conserve. "Kody, please," Robyn whispered tearfully. "Let's go." But Kody didn't budge. His eyes were fixed on Christine. "You think this sets you free? You think you've won?" His voice shook. "You'll never erase me." Christine stood. "I don't need to erase you, Kody. You did that yourself." Outside, the sky had started to drizzle. Christine and Janelle emerged from the courthouse side by side. The wind carried the echo of camera shutters and murmured questions. "How do you feel, Christine?" a reporter called out. Christine paused for a moment, then said simply, "Like I can finally breathe." They walked toward the waiting car. But as Christine reached the door, she looked back once, toward the courthouse steps. Inside, through the glass, Kody was frozen, alone, his reflection fractured by the raindrops sliding down the window. Robyn stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder, but he didn't react. He just stared out into space, hollow, defeated, but still simmering with a kind of rage that hadn't burned out yet. And somewhere deep in that silence, Christine could feel it. This wasn't truly over. The legal fight had ended, but the story, their story, was far from done. As she got into the car, Janelle turned to her. "You think he's going to let it go?" Christine looked out the window, eyes still on the courthouse. "No," she said quietly. "He's going to make this personal." The car drove off with the rain blurring the view of the courthouse up ahead. Just another symbol of justice and the closing of an era. But back inside, Kody leaned forward against the courtroom bench, his words low and under his breath. The bailiff barely caught it, but the words were chilling. If they think this is over, they're wrong. And that was the moment, quiet, cold, and unseen, when Kody Brown stopped being a husband fighting for redemption and became a man plotting to reclaim what he'd lost. The storm that had been brewing for years finally broke. The doors of the courthouse closed behind Christine and Janelle, yet it sounded like the final chapter slammed shut. Inside, Kody sat motionless, staring at the now empty bench where the judge had made her ruling. Robyn hovered near him, not quite knowing if she should reach out or give him space. He was still too still, like a man trying to fathom how everything he thought he controlled had collapsed. Reporters swarmed outside. Headlines were already rolling in. Christine Brown wins legal battle, Kody's downfall confirmed. The Browns' legacy ends in courtroom chaos. For Christine, it wasn't victory she had felt. It was release, freedom at last. But with freedom came something else, grief. Because walking away from pain doesn't erase it, it just stops it from growing. That night, a gentle desert wind blew across Flagstaff. Christine sat on her porch, the golden glow of her porch light dimly wrapped around her in comfort. Janelle was inside, talking soft to her daughters, who'd been following every headline. It was Christine's triumph, as the world would call it. But to Christine, it wasn't triumph. It was just truth, raw and exposed. She whispered to herself, "He'll never change." But I did. And with that, she smiled through the ache in her chest. Inside, Janelle joined her. "You think he'll stop fighting?" She shook her head slowly. "No, he is already thinking of his next move." Janelle frowned. "You mean," Christine interrupted softly, "Kody doesn't lose. He plots?" Meanwhile, across town, Kody sat alone in the dark of his living room. The fireplace was off. The only light came from the faint flicker of his phone screen, scrolling through articles about himself. Each headline was another cut, another reminder that his image, the confident patriarch, the family leader, was gone. Torn apart by truth. Robyn sat across the room and cried quietly. "Kody, maybe it's time to let go. Maybe you just need to accept what?" He snapped, his voice breaking. "That I'm the villain now? That everything I built is gone?" Robyn flinched. "You built it on control, not love. You said it yourself. You tried to keep everyone in line." He suddenly rose, pacing. "You think they care about the truth? They just want to see me burn." He picked up the remote and clicked the TV on. Christine's face filled the screen, a clip of her post-court interview. "It's over now," she said softly. "I just hope he finds peace. But I don't think he knows what that means." Kody's breathing turned uneven. He shut off the TV. "She's not done with me," he muttered. "She wants to destroy me." Robyn wiped away her tears. "No, Kody, you destroyed yourself." He glared at her. "Don't you dare turn on me too." The next morning, Christine's phone was blowing up. Messages, calls, notifications. The world had opinions and everyone wanted her side. But one message stood out. It wasn't from a reporter. It was from an unknown number. She opened it. Just 4 words. "You went too far." Her stomach fell. She didn't need to ask who it was. "Kody." Janelle saw her expression. "What's wrong?" Christine clicked the lock on her phone. "Nothing, just unfinished business." But deep down, she knew it wasn't nothing. This was Kody's way of saying the war wasn't over. Not for him. And she knew men like Kody don't move on. They retaliate. At home, Kody sat at his desk in a sea of scattered papers, financial records, legal letters, old family photos. His reflection stared back at him from a darkened window, eyes red with bitterness. He whispered almost to himself, "They think they took everything from me. But I still have one thing left." He opened a drawer and pulled out a black flash drive labeled Family Holdings. Robyn watched from the doorway. "What is that?" He smiled wryly. "Insurance." Her face went pale. "Kody." Please don't do anything stupid. He gave her a cold look. You think I am stupid? No, Robyn, I'm strategic. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she whispered quietly, You've lost everyone. Don't lose yourself, too. He didn't answer. He only looked down at the flash drive, turning it between his fingers. The red light of the desk lamp reflected in his eyes, shining like fire. Later that night, Christine and Janelle met up at a small cafe, without cameras, without reporters. Just two women closing a chapter. They laughed softly at how surreal it all was. The courtroom, the evidence, the verdict. But beneath the laughter was something heavier fear because even victory has its echoes. I keep thinking about what he said, Janelle murmured. About none of this being over. Christine nodded slowly. He's angry, and anger doesn't just disappear. Janelle looked out the window. You think he'd try to fight back legally? Christine's eyes flickered. No, something worse. He's going to play dirty. A pause. Then what do we do? Janelle asked. Christine sipped her coffee, looking off into the distance. We stay ready. The truth may have won in court, but Kody's never been one to lose quietly. Across town, Kody sat solitary on the edge of his bed with his gaze fixed on his phone. He opened up his camera roll, old photos of the family, smiling faces, kids laughing, holidays spent together. He scrolled until he found one, Christine smiling beside him in their younger years. He stared at it for a long time. Then slowly he deleted it. If they want me gone, he whispered, his voice cracking, then I'll make sure they never forget me. The storm was rumbling in the distance. A flash of lightning burst through the window, silhouetting half his face in shadow and half in light. The line between grief and vengeance became blurred in his eyes. To Kody Brown, love had always been a battlefield, and the war wasn't over. Final scene, emotional cliffhanger. Christine sat in her car later that night, the rain lightly tapping against the windshield. She let out a breath and clutched the steering wheel, her reflection barely outlined in the glass. Her phone buzzed yet again. One new message. This time a photo. Her old wedding ring, sitting on her doorstep. No text, no name. Just the image. Tears brimmed in Christine's eyes. She looked out into the rain, but no one was there. Only the dark and the faint echo of thunder. She whispered to herself, You don't get to haunt me anymore. But behind her, across the street, a shadow moved, just far enough away to be unseen, and with that, the screen fades to black. To be continued. The truth always finds its way back.